Upon crossing that threshold, something shattered. Not merely the ambiance or the room, but deep within me, an unacknowledged foundation of strength. It was a Friday evening, the memory of which remains vivid due to the somber weather I had observed all day through my office window. A muddle of leaden clouds, the type that don't precipitate rain but still leave you damp. I had just concluded another grueling 10-hour stint in IT support, returned home expecting a warm meal and perhaps an evening cuddling with my wife on the couch as she browsed TikTok. Instead, I found an empty apartment, a cold supper abandoned on the counter, and a message from her saying, "At Trevor's, don't wait up." The repetition of that name was unsettling. He had made occasional appearances over the past couple months, according to her. A colleague in marketing, she claimed. "We barely converse," she said once when I inquired. "Then he's like a brother." And another time, she accidentally disclosed, "Trevor suggests I dye my hair dark again." Insignificant occurrences appeared linked in a different way when viewed through a new lens, but I attempted to ignore it. I heated leftover lasagna and watched a bit of an unmemorable show. Yet I found myself frozen mid-bite, eyes fixed on the paused screen, and a voice echoed softly, "You're not stupid. You just don't want it to be real." At that moment, I gathered my keys and departed. Trevor's residence was familiar, as Jessica had once driven us past it, mentioning his monotonous barbecues and eccentric love for vintage records. She found humor in it. I joined her laughter too back then. That was before I discovered the scripted nature of the scene. I parked a block away and walked the remaining distance under two hushed trees, my footsteps muted against the pavement. An excessive number of vehicles were parked in the driveway, each room illuminated as if the house was perspiring secrets. I approached the door, neither knocking nor calling her name. Instead, I marched straight inside. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. No one impeded me. A few faces glanced, but none uttered a word. I meandered unchallenged through that dwelling as if it were my intended destination. The music, its thumping beat reverberating down the corridor like an impending announcement, led me. Then there she was, Jessica, sitting on Trevor's lap in the center of a group, her arms languidly draped around his neck, his hands possessively holding her hips. She was bare, completely exposed. What astounds me is that she didn't seem startled. Her eyes remained calm and lethargic, as if acknowledging an everyday occurrence, such as a pet's accident on the floor. I found myself speechless. She lifted a flute of champagne, directed it towards me, and said, "I didn't expect you to attend." The people surrounding them chuckled, implying that I was part of the show, that they were all aware, as if I had arrived late to the punchline. I remained still, unmoving, unblinking. My mind screamed for action, yet I remained motionless, trapped in an eerie tableau, as my wife performed before me, casting me as the disapproving audience. She then commented, "You could have texted first." Such a trivial complaint, yet it seemed to be the crux of the matter. Trevor remained silent, only clinging tighter to her, as if she now belonged entirely to him. Perhaps that was the truth. This was not the start of the affair. That had already been underway. This was the commencement of our undoing, the unraveling of my identity, hers, and everything I believed about love, fidelity, and the woman with whom I'd constructed my life. And what followed was turmoil. I don't recall leaving. One moment I was gazing at her, at the woman who used to be my sleeping companion, and the next I was outside, on the front lawn, the music muffled by the closed door behind me. The cold air struck me forcefully, as if reminding me I was still breathing. I was there, hands by my sides, staring at the ominous sky as if it held the solution. It didn't. My phone vibrated. A message from her. "You could have managed that situation better." The thought almost brought a smile to my face, not because it was amusing, but because her initial response was exactly what I expected. No apology, no alarm, not a hint of remorse, just frosty criticism, as if I were the one causing her distress. I didn't respond. Instead, I slid into my car and sat there, engine humming. The dashboard lights swam before me behind the weight in my eyes. My fists clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached as if they might fracture. I can't say for certain how long I stayed like that. Perhaps 10 minutes, maybe an hour. Every meaning evaporated. Then I drove. No destination in mind. Just away. I wound up in a Walmart parking lot in another town. vacant at this hour save for a few trucks and a night security car patrolling. I remained in the lot, pondered everything: the wedding, our first home, our short-lived dog's illness, the tiny sticky notes she used to put in my lunches, the way she would rest her hand on my knee during lengthy car rides. These memories surfaced again. Then I contemplated how effortlessly she discarded them all, as if they held no value. My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. Another message string. You humiliated yourself. We can discuss things when you cool down. Don't act impulsively. That last one made me almost hurl my phone at the windshield. Foolish? For months, I'd been a fool, trusting her, forgiving her, defending her even as my friends raised doubts. They had seen it before I did, how she treated me in front of others. I returned home as dawn broke. The apartment reeked of nothingness, silence echoing through it. My suitcase was unused in the closet. With careful slowness, I took it out as if performing surgery on my own life. One shirt, one pair of pants, every charger, every document, my razor, my toothbrush, my self-respect. These were my takeaways. No note left, no message sent, no call made. Stepped out from my departure, halfway down the corridor, the elevator slid open and she emerged. Her hair disheveled from yesterday, smeared eyeliner beneath her eyes, donning the hoodie I'd gifted at Christmas. She paused, glanced at me, then the suitcase. What are you up to? Her voice was composed, but it was too serene. I met her gaze. For months, I hadn't felt tall, clear-headed, or unaffected. But in that moment, I didn't feel diminished. I didn't feel puzzled. I felt nothing. I announced my departure. She sighed. Oh, Daniel, you're being overly dramatic. I remained mute, simply passed her by. As the elevator doors sealed shut behind me, her laughter echoed. A quiet, biting chuckle, like I was still the joke. At that moment, she no longer held the reins, and this was just the start. It's peculiar how swiftly silence can overpower anything else. That morning, I booked a low-cost hotel room with stark walls, beige decor, and a view of the gas station diagonally opposite. The air carried a blend of bleach and solitude, yet strangely, it seemed more comforting than our apartment had ever felt before. Lying on the bed, I gazed at the ceiling, allowing everything to settle, not thinking, just drifting. Then my phone buzzed again, a blocked number. I chose to let it reach voicemail. It rang twice more, each time the same pattern. The third time, I answered. It was Daniel. Her voice was delicate and sweet, like a dangerous weapon swathed in silk. Where have you been? I remained silent. Aren't you going to make a big deal out of this? More silence. Then the facade cracked. You always do this, disappearing when things don't go your way. All I uttered was one word. Farewell, she retorted sharply. Oh, grow up! I ended the call, blocked her number. It felt like amputating my own limb. The first day was the most difficult. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, just reliving it all. Every argument, every excuse, every subtle change in her eyes when I asked innocent questions. The manipulation, the diversion tactics, the emotional blackmail. Everything was clear as broad daylight once I managed to stop loving her enough to ignore her flaws. By the second day, she found alternate methods to contact me. A friend of hers named Megan messaged me on Facebook, claiming that Jessica was extremely anxious. She stated it was all a big misconception, that she was intoxicated, that she couldn't remember much, that I had frightened her by showing up unexpectedly. I remained silent. That very night, I received an email from Jessica herself with the subject line, "Let's behave like adults about this." It opened with her familiar script, calm language, feigned compassion, emotional manipulation. Daniel, I understand you're hurt. However, I believe that deep down, you know that what you witnessed wasn't as it seemed. Things have been difficult for a while. We disconnected. I needed to experience some feelings. You weren't providing me with what I required. That doesn't make me a bad person. She closed with, I am eager to mend this if you can view things objectively. Capable. Her throwing herself at another man, seemingly a casual act, was actually something complex that needed contemplation. It was the first time in days I laughed, a dry and unpleasant laughter. I didn't respond to her email. Instead, I forwarded it to my friend Matt, who had warned me about her 2 years ago. He called me shortly after. Dan, he said, don't go back. He was the only one who saw through her charms. She always disliked him for that, calling him toxic and envious, just trying to create chaos. But in truth, Matt wasn't fooled by her facade. Later that day, he came to the hotel with a bag of food, beer, and our old playboxes from college. We spent most of the time in silence, mainly playing games on the screen, letting the comfort of an old friendship ease the pain. Around midnight, I told him everything, every detail, every word she'd spoken. Every time, I dismissed warning signs, either engulfed by love or fear of reality. He didn't taunt. "I told you so." Instead, he simply nodded, then spoke words I can't forget. "She doesn't care for you, buddy. She cherishes how you make her feel about herself." That stung more than anything else because it was true. Jessica never inquired about my day, seldom remembered trivial details I shared, and always perceived me as a reflection of herself. And when that reflection no longer flattered her, she shattered it. By the third day, I erased every picture of her from my phone, rented a storage unit, and drafted a list, a plan. For if she believed I would just vanish silently, she didn't know me well at all. A unique sense of understanding emerges when you weather the harshest tempest. Not tranquility, no, not yet, but something chillier, more piercing, like the air after thunder. In the hotel room, the phone lay face down on the nightstand, her final message still unread. This time, it was a voice message. I spotted the waveform symbol, 42 seconds long. I didn't have to listen to it. I recognized her rhythm already. How she'd sigh in the middle as if she were the wronged one, how she'd toss off a partially veiled comment about my emotional vulnerability. I'd heard such messages in person before. I didn't need a repeat, so I erased it, without playing it back. That was the first assertive action I'd taken in months. The following move occurred that afternoon. I returned to the apartment during noon, hoping she'd be at work. I had no wish for an argument, not yet, not while her name still left a burn each time it crossed my mind. I merely wanted my belongings, the essentials, sufficient to start a new life in a place where she'd never resurface again. The building was silent. My key still functioned, surprising me. I entered like a burglar in my own existence. The living room appeared the same, but it felt empty. Her laptop sat on the coffee table. Her shoes were strewn lazily by the door in her usual arc. A half-drained wine glass stood on the counter. Everything seemed too ordinary, as if it had been arranged. It appeared like an imitation of our home. I hastily gathered my belongings, my passport, important documents, and some favorite shirts. However, it wasn't until I reached the bedroom that I halted. Her phone lay on the bed, unlocked, with notifications flickering across the screen one after another. Messages from Trevor. I promised myself I wouldn't read them, but the first one hit me hard. "Trevor, I can't believe he just barged in like that. You were a queen." "Really? The hottest thing I've ever seen?" And under that, "Trevor, do you think he'll try to fight me?" LOL. I can't recall how long I stared at it. The phone buzzed again. "Trevor, darling, are you okay?" He didn't get angry with you, did he? "Darling." She called me paranoid when I asked why she was texting him late. She said I was insecure, that I was overreacting. While I believed she was protecting me, they were making fun of me, fantasizing about my humiliation, addressing her as a queen. I snapped a photo of the messages using my personal phone, which prompted my decisive action. I wasn't simply going to abandon the situation. I was determined to ensure she would always remember her actions. This wasn't motivated by anger or revenge, but rather a need for cold, factual truth. Individuals like Jessica often rewrite history, portraying themselves as victims and their ex-spouses as unstable due to their independence. I refused to allow such an ending. After gathering my belongings, I departed. En route to the car, I notified my landlord via text. "Leaving early. We'll pay for next month. Please consider this notice. She can keep the lease." Subsequently, I performed an action I had never anticipated. I posted on Facebook. This was not a rant or display of drama, but rather a brief statement. For those who inquire, yes, I found Jessica with another person. No, I'm not okay, but I will be. The responses flooded in. Some were shocked, others had suspected it all along. 2 acquaintances privately messaged, admitting they had seen signs and heard rumors. Refused to interfere. It was then that events began to fall neatly into place. Jessica hadn't just been unfaithful, she had been crafting a narrative, laying the groundwork in our social circles to portray herself as the victim if needed. She claimed we were growing apart, that I was emotionally detached, and that I worked excessively. I used to dismiss these remarks as mere venting, but now it was clear to me. She wasn't planning to cheat. She was planning to escape punishment for it. And I had been oblivious. Not anymore. You often hear about betrayal as a sudden, sharp event, a stab, a cut, a clean break. However, what I realized is that betrayal is gradual. It's corrosion. It begins months before the final act, sneaking into moments you don't even notice at the time. When she stopped inquiring about your day, when she placed her phone face down on the table, when she told you that you were imagining things and you trusted her. Following the apartment, messages, and Facebook post, Jessica swung into crisis management. She was upset I had shared our story with others, taking it out of her control. The initial message to me was filled with emotional appeasement, disguised as remorse. I never intended to hurt you. It just transpired. You weren't there. She played on my feelings, hitting all the right notes. I chose not to reply. Then she stepped up the pressure. A friend of hers, Carly, contacted me. A woman who used to chuckle with Jessica at brunches while I picked up the tab. Jessica is struggling, she said. She's not sleeping. She's crying all day. You don't realize how perplexed she is. I inquired about one thing. Is she still seeing Trevor? Pause. I believe she needs time to sort things out. Sort things out. That phrase stung, because I knew what it truly implied. It meant she didn't regret her actions, only that she was caught. And now she wanted space. It was time to discover if the grass indeed appeared greener, and whether she would return, laden with tearful admissions and hoping for my forgiveness. However, I wouldn't grant her that opportunity. No longer enraged as I once was, the feeling had morphed into something cooler, purer. A transition from sorrow to determination had taken place. So I penned an email to her. Absent of rage and insults, it contained only the truth. I disclosed her messages, my possession of copies, my unwillingness for reconciliation, my permission for her to pursue anything she desired, but under no circumstances within my life again. Closing with a single sentence, "You made your choice, now I am making mine." She failed to respond. Instead, I began receiving messages from her brother, mother, college roommate, individuals I hadn't interacted with in years, each conveying some variation of sympathy or indifference. I remain impartial. I don't possess the complete narrative. Relationships are intricate. One individual casually commented, "After all, she didn't murder anyone." It was then that I understood the extent of her efforts to construct an alibi. She had portrayed me as detached, disconnected, and consumed by work. Over time, she subtly sowed seeds of distrust that, when the truth surfaced, left people questioning which story was true. However, I knew the truth, as did she. I severed all ties with them. It wasn't about retaliation. It was about silencing her, reclaiming what she had taken from me bit by manipulative bit. I returned to work on Monday. No one inquired about my absence. Some eyed me differently. I paid no heed. I attended my duties, went home, and kept my life simple and clean. I initiated therapy, resumed running, opened a new bank account, changed my address, and contacted my lawyer regarding separation papers. I didn't inform Jessica of the filing. She would learn soon enough. Each step I took towards reclaiming my life made me feel more powerful, less burdened. Daily, her memory, along with the couch, her gaze, her laughter, gradually shed more weight. What they fail to mention is that healing doesn't happen instantaneously. Instead, it unfolds choice by choice. I was deciding my path. It had been 4 weeks of silence when she unexpectedly appeared. Fresh from a morning run, drenched in sweat and with earbuds still plugged in, there came a hesitant knock on the hotel door, subtle, cautious, as if whoever was behind it questioned their right to be there. I opened the door. It was Jessica, her hair styled casually but seemingly after considerable effort. Sunglasses dark, oversized. My old sweater, the one she used to take from the laundry pile before it was folded. She removed her glasses slowly, performing a kind of ritual. Her eyes were reddened. Whether they were truly red or artificially so, I could no longer discern. I was skeptical of anything that emanated from her face. "Hello," she whispered quietly. I remained in the doorway, silent. She inquired, casting a glance that suggested the room might hold a past version of me she recalled fondly, the one who would pardon her with a sigh and an embrace. "No," was my curt response, startling her more than any harsh words could have. Shifting her weight, she tried again. "I merely wish to converse." Pray consider. I exited, shutting the door behind me, denying her entry. That realm wasn't hers now. The boundary had been set. We stood in the corridor like two unfamiliar individuals meeting for the first time. She commenced with her customary spiel. I miss you. I acknowledge my mistakes. I've been contemplating a lot. I've been writing in a journal. I consulted a counselor. She watched me intently for any sign of response. I remained impassive. I comprehend the gravity of what I did, she went on. However, you must grasp. My actions weren't deliberate. I didn't intend for any of this to transpire. I merely voiced my thoughts. You didn't mean to find yourself in someone's lap? Unclothed? At a gathering? Her countenance flickered slightly. That was one instance, she said. No, was my reply. That pivotal moment unveiled a betrayal that had been brewing for quite some time. When I confronted her, she crossed her arms defensively and asked, "Is this it? Are you just going to toss everything aside?" I hesitated before replying, "You discarded it first, Jess. You ignited it. All I'm doing is refusing to dwell in the ruins." Her eyes glazed over, but the tears, trembling lips, and evident remorse no longer affected me. Instead, I spoke candidly. I no longer feel loved by you. I let that sink in before telling you. You chose betrayal of the one who never wavered. She fell silent as she pondered her persona to present. The victim, the seductress, or the wounded soul? But none of them seemed convincing. I left no room for her to act out. I filed the divorce papers and informed her, "You'll receive them this week." Her expression froze in shock when she realized I had already taken action. Stop promising change. Don't ask for another opportunity. For 6 years, you neglected what we shared. You chose to let it go. She seemed on the verge of shouting or crying, but instead, she straightened her posture, put her sunglasses back on. With words laced with venom, so casual they were almost humorous, she said, "You'll never find someone who loved you as I did." Stepping back, I offered a smile that was anything but kind. "I hope not," I replied. She stood still for a moment, then walked away down the hallway. There was no dramatic exit, no last look, only the sound of footsteps disappearing into a life that no longer included me. I hesitated before going back inside. I just stood there, breathing. The hallway reeked of cheap air freshener and old carpet, but for the first time, it didn't smell like her. It smelled clean. In the days following her visit, I anticipated something. Anything. A callback, a tantrum. But nothing came. Another lengthy explanation for her actions, suggesting I played a part, yet nothing followed. The silence, however, spoke volumes, louder than her empty apologies. It implied she was altering the story, not for me, nor for others. She was reshaping herself as the misconstrued woman who married an insensitive man, lost in a marriage lacking comprehension. I could envision it clearly, her recounting to friends over wine about my coldness, how I transformed, how I never truly listened. Yet, it didn't matter anymore, because while she was engrossed in storytelling, I was occupied with reconstruction. I relocated from the hotel into a compact one-bedroom apartment on the city outskirts. It wasn't grand, boasting white walls, aged floors that echoed at night, a kitchen barely larger than a closet. But it was mine, with my clothes in the closet and my name on the lease. No remnants of her perfume on the pillows, no unused toothbrush left in the holder. Freedom isn't always accompanied by a celebration. Sometimes it's a peaceful night without deceit. One evening, I received a message from Matt. "She's telling people you were unfaithful to her. Thought you should know." I paused, looking at the screen, feeling anger and disbelief. The audacity, the insolence. I chose not to respond, instead opening the folder I'd made on my laptop. It contained screenshots, time-stamped photos, voicemails, and even a surveillance video of her confession in a hotel hallway, just in case she took things too far. I put it all together in a private document. I didn't intend to use it for vengeance. I didn't desire revenge, but I needed truth. If someone asks about the past, years down the line, I won't hesitate or doubt myself. I'll say clearly and without shame, she deceived me intentionally, repeatedly, calculatingly. And when she was exposed, she twisted the truth. Because that's what they do. Those who behave like her, they don't just break your heart, they manipulate it. These experiences have you doubting if it was ever truly complete. In time, my days transformed and reshaped themselves. The numbness subsided. I took up reading again, cooking, running longer distances, and even started sketching, a hobby I hadn't pursued since college. It seemed like all the overlooked aspects of myself were gradually emerging from shadows, seeking safety. Yes, I assured them. It's safe now. Unexpectedly, I encountered someone from our old group, Emily, a person Jessica always considered too direct and intense. But I understood that this meant Emily saw straight through her. We met for coffee. She didn't bring up Jessica, nor did I. We simply conversed, laughed. It was straightforward, effortless. As I left the cafe, I recognized a feeling I hadn't felt in months. Hope, not for romance or love, but for myself, for a life free from someone else's turmoil, for mornings filled with anticipation instead of dread, for peaceful nights. Jessica persisted in existence somewhere, likely narrating a tale to another that made her feel like the protagonist of a sorrowful play. Yet I had departed from her scene. As distance increased, clarity magnified. I never conceived healing would manifest as such. Not like a firework or a triumphant lap, rather it seemed more akin to a tranquil breath, a solitary expulsion after holding it in for an excessive duration. Days turned into weeks. The divorce proceedings advanced. My lawyer, shrewd, businesslike, and unsentimental, managed everything with a quiet effectiveness I admired. Each document, each provision, every deadline was addressed without pomp. It was the antithesis of Jessica's turmoil. She eventually responded through her own counsel. No direct communication, no emails or texts, no emotional voicemails. She had receded into the obscurity now, emerging only to sign what was necessary. The woman who used to flood my inbox with late-night speeches and coercive appeals now sent terse legal correspondences via intermediaries. This was ideal for me since the fewer words she spoke, the more control I reclaimed. However, just when I believed she had accepted the end, she attempted one final trick. While at work, I received a message from an unknown number with no name, simply, "Do you truly believe you can do better than me?" Accompanying this was a photo, her in our old apartment, wearing a robe, standing by the window. It was evidently recent. Her hair was longer, and there was a new plant on the counter, one I had never seen before. I fixated on the image not because I missed her, but because I understood it clearly then. The pose, the angle. It was calculated, not desperate, but strategic. Her final tactic, nostalgia. She wasn't reaching out to me because she wanted me. She was reaching out because she didn't want me to move on. That's what people like her abhor most, not the breakup, not the loss, but the idea of moving forward without them. No longer does she linger rent-free in my mind, replaced by smiles devoid of her presence. She was not as indelible as I once believed. I erased the message, barred her number. A more positive action followed. I discarded the remaining traces of her from my storage box. All but one item remained, a birthday card from our third year together. One of those hastily chosen, supposedly thoughtful cards. The inside message wasn't personalized, just a name and a quick, "Love you." I incinerated it, cautiously and deliberately, over the sink in my new apartment. It was not a dramatic act, rather it was past due. That weekend, Matt and I embarked on a hike. No phones, no signals, not even Sky. I shared everything with him, about the message, the photograph, the fire. He smiled. "She's losing her hold. That's what this is." I agreed. I am finished providing her footholds. At the peak of the ridge, I acknowledged I hadn't thought about her for hours without a pang. She remained out there, but no longer within me. Not in my breath, not in my heart, and not in my future plans. When the final divorce documents arrived, I didn't hesitate or waver before signing them as a jazz record played softly in the background. The sensation of pen on paper, once symbolizing commitment, now felt like liberation. It was finished, legally, emotionally, logistically. I had pondered if she would make one final attempt to save us. A call, a question, perhaps a sorrowful message, or a cryptic post designed to reel me back in. But she didn't, because there was no need. Her last move was not to contact me. It was to erase all remnants of me from her presence. Pictures removed, posts altered, comments deleted. Friends later shared that she had wiped clean any trace of me online. She altered her relationship status and subsequently deleted it completely. It seemed as if we never had a marriage. She appeared to have emerged from a dream, with me merely being a hazy remnant of it. Strangely enough, I didn't feel effaced. Instead, I felt inscribed upon myself. because all the tranquility, self-assuredness, and solidity she attempted to deprive me of returned stronger than before. They were rebuilt, not despite her actions, but because of the turbulence she instigated. It's ironic how things unfold. I bumped into her once. There was no drama involved. It was merely an encounter at a downtown cafe. She wasn't with Trevor. Instead, she was accompanied by someone else. They recognized her, a younger version of her. She looked the same, composed, well-dressed, and performance-driven. When she saw me, she hesitated, waited for my response. I gave none. Not out of hostility, but out of apathy. And that act? That shattered her more effectively than any derogatory comment could have. She flashed a too bright smile, leaned closer to the man she was with as if trying to validate something. But I didn't linger long enough to observe how it unfolded. I exited, left the establishment, stepped into the daylight. Initially, I imagined our reunion would be cataclysmic. She would unsettle me profoundly. Instead, it solidified everything. She was no longer the tempest nor the anchor, merely an acquaintance from my past. A few days later, sifting through old crates for a thorough cleanse, I stumbled upon a list penned by her years ago, things I cherish about us. It brimmed with sentimentality, film evenings, shared jokes, my culinary skills. However, the final entry read, "You always had faith in me, even when I didn't deserve it." This phrase lingered in my mind. Indeed, she was correct. I had unwaveringly trusted her, far beyond what was reasonable. But now, I trust myself. It's been half a year, and I live life differently, more deliberately, more patiently. My days start with the sun, not anxiety. My phone no longer makes me jump. I no longer anticipate impending doom because I'm no longer confined within someone else's dwelling. Instead, I crafted my own sanctuary. Though imperfect, small, and slightly weathered near the windows, it's mine. All within mirrors my essence: books, art, music, quietude, devoid of echoes of a voice that once instilled self-doubt. Remarkably, I am thankful for all this transpiring, not because I reveled in agony, quite the opposite, but because sometimes to discern reality, everything must crumble. One needs the ground to give way to understand one possessed wings all along. My relationship with Jessica has ceased. She's progressed, flaunting a new partner and meticulously crafted lifestyle. Her social media abounds with airbrushed grins and posts about personal development and tranquility. The irony is palpable, but I no longer dwell on it. For while she constructs, I live. I resumed regular therapy sessions. I joined a cycling club. I enrolled in that painting class I'd consistently talked myself out of. I rekindled friendships I'd neglected amidst her emotions. I embarked on a solo journey, only me, a backpack, and a journal. The mountains don't deceive you as people do. You are reminded of the smallness of things and how comforting it can be to accept this reality. Often, others question me about my circumstances. I don't share the entire narrative with them. I simply say, "She taught me whom to avoid." That suffices, for there is something potent in determining your destiny, in refusing to let a traumatic chapter overshadow the entire tale, in escaping the inferno and recognizing that you are not scorched but tempered. If you find yourself in a similar situation, blindsided, deceived, shattered, I want you to understand this clearly. You aren't weak for trusting someone. You aren't foolish for loving deeply, but you are strong when you come to the realization that you deserve more. You will navigate through hell. You will feel as though your heart is a fragile structure under attack. However, there will come a day when you'll awaken, and you won't think of them first. You won't carry the burden any longer. You'll be liberated, and you'll comprehend that choosing yourself wasn't the conclusion. It was the commencement. I discovered my wife with another man. She was naked. You too? I am as well.